It's 5:20, time for our regular evening meeting, first meeting in December, where we'll have the board meeting and then the Truth and Taxation meeting. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call will show that all commissioners are present tonight. The first item we have on the agenda is to approve the agenda. Are there any additions or changes to the agenda? If not, I'll look for a motion to approve.
So moved.
Commissioner Lenzmeyer?
Second.
Commissioner Notch? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. The next item we have is public forum. Is there anyone wishing to speak tonight at the public forum? Anyone wishing to speak? Last chance. Okay, we'll move on. The consent agenda. Commissioners, before you, you have items 1 through 5 on the consent agenda. Are there any items in which you'd like to have removed for separate discussion?
Mr. Chair, I'll move consent
Okay.
agenda.
Motion to approve all 5 items?
Second.
And a second. Commissioner Clark? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. We'll move on to Public Works. Good evening, Jody.
Good evening, Jody Tech County Engineer. My items begin on page 44 of your agenda packets. My first item is I'm asking the board to adopt an updated bridge priority resolution. The last one was adopted in July of 2019. Since then, MnDOT has changed some of their factors to determine eligibility, which does make a few more bridges eligible for funding. This resolution, by being adopted, does not commit us to replacing any of these bridges or on this timeline, but in order for a bridge to be eligible for either township bridge funding or state bridge bonding funds, it does need to be on a priority resolution. So I'm asking the board to adopt that resolution tonight.
Okay. Questions on that issue, on the priority list on the bridge adoptions? Now I'll look for a motion to approve that.
I can move that.
Commissioner Lenzmeyer? Commissioner Notch?
Second.
Any further discussion? Jody, you know, bridges and culverts are expensive to replace and to maintain. I hope we're doing okay.
We are doing okay. We've got a few we'd like to definitely see get done over the next couple of years, just because of the condition and the load postings, but we're doing better than some of my colleagues across the state, so.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
For my next item, I'm asking the board to approve the updated traffic signal systems joint powers agreement that we have with the city of St. Cloud. And you'll notice on your agenda item that the existing agreement actually terminated at the end of 2014. We've been moving along status quo. We've made a few minor changes just to simplify the agreement and how things have been working. So this agreement would actually expire on December 31st, 2026, with the option that through written notice to each other, we can extend that in 5-year increments. So I'm asking the board to approve this agreement.
Look for a motion to approve that agreement.
Well, we've been doing this for years, right?
Since 2004.
Yeah. I'd move approval.
Second.
And a second by Commissioner Clark. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. And Jody, I'll tell you what, since we just had this agreement about the traffic signals, I have had a couple of inquiries about the blue lights.
I can cover that in my miscellaneous items if you'd like.
Let's move on and we'll get it later.
My next item is I'm asking the board to adopt resolutions certifying that local match funds are available for some federal funding applications that we have. What we plan to submit for federal funding, County Road 2 reconstruction from 421st Street to County Road 1, and that's at Region 7W, and that's north of St. Stephen. County Road 81 resurfacing, that's also known as 3rd Street North. From 12th Avenue and Wade Park to Trunk Highway 15 in St. Cloud, that would be submitted to the APO. And also for County Road 133 expansion from County Road 75 to 15th Avenue in St. Joseph. City of St. Joseph is very much in favor of this project, and they'd also like to see intersection improvements at Elm Street. So I have the 3 resolutions. They're required part of our application submittal in both Region 7W and the St. Cloud APO.
Okay. Would someone like to move that?
Well, since they got lockjaw, I'll move that.
Commissioner Lenzmeyer, you're hot tonight.
I'll move it with,
And
I'll
Commissioner,
move it with a
Yeah,
question.
second with a
yeah,
question?
come on, you
Okay.
guys. And the nap.
Okay.
So Jody, on page 60 is that county state aid 81 resurfacing. So is that like from the Parkwood 18 then over to?
It's just slightly northeast of the Parkwood 18 because that section of pavement is significantly, well, several years newer than the portion between 12th Avenue, kind of by the Moose Lodge, or just east of the Moose Lodge by about a block, and then it goes all the way to Highway 15. That was reconstructed in 2001.
So is there any reason that that would always stay a county road versus a city street?
It's a minor arterial. It is a connector road. Right now, it's a 4-lane highway. We pay Waite Park to maintain that for us because we have a set per lane mile dollar amount that we update every year. It's certainly something we can look at. The traffic volumes are significant on it compared to a lot of Waite Park streets.
Just the curiosity being it was.
And being that that is a state aid route, the city would absolutely need to approve us giving it to them because they have to, by law, approve removing state aid designation.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
Okay. I'll call the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
So, under my miscellaneous items, you may have seen along several signals on County Road 75 and a few along Highway 15, there are blue lights placed in various positions on the poles within the intersection. Those blue lights are not photo enforcement because that's illegal in Minnesota. They are actually used to help law enforcement more efficiently enforce red light running. So instead of having multiple vehicles, or at least 2, one upstream of the intersection that can see when the light turns red and the vehicle crosses into the intersection after it's turned red, and then another person downstream of the intersection so they can safely pull them over without themselves running the red light. These blue lights are placed in a position where the law enforcement vehicle can sit in a safe spot to both see that vehicle enter the intersection after it turns red, because when certain directions turn red, that specific blue light comes on. So when the blue light comes on, they know it's red, they see the vehicle cross into the intersection, and then they can safely proceed to pull that vehicle over who has violated the red light. So we've got them. We worked with local law enforcement agencies, the City of St. Joseph, City of Waite Park, Stearns County, Sheriff's deputies were very helpful in the City of Sartell. We're all very interested in this, and so we picked signals that either we know have a red light running issue, or it was easier to have vehicles placed in safe spots. And then we wanted to know also that the local law enforcement was actually going to be willing to use this as a tool. We would hope that we don't give out a lot of tickets, but that people, if they know they're out there, will just quit running red lights. Most of our serious crashes at signalized intersections are caused by somebody trying to make it through that yellow light. The light turns red, turns green in the other direction, and then you have those T-bone or right angle type crashes. So we're hoping just the awareness of it will make people a little bit more compliant with the red lights.
Thank you.
That project was funded with 90% federal funding, so significant savings for us. The overall contract was just over $50,000, and we paid less than $5,000 of that cost for all the intersections that were done.
Avoiding one accident would pay for that.
Absolutely.
How many of those types of accidents have we had?
Over the last 5 to 7 years, quite a few. On that stretch of 75 that is posted at 60 miles an hour, those are some of our more serious crashes. We do have some run-off road crashes, but at those signalized intersections within that 50 to 60 mile an hour zone, we've had quite a few crashes. And then even at the newer intersection, of course, that is also 60 miles an hour, that is west of St. Joseph, where we realigned County Road 2 to kind of bypass the city. We've had quite a few crashes at that intersection as well. I don't know exact numbers off the top of my head, I'm sorry.
Oh, we've had, okay. I was just wondering if we had some money and then we're looking for a problem
No.
to deal
no.
with.
We have plenty of problems to throw money at without
Okay.
creating them, so.
Probably not enough.
Okay. Any other questions for Jody? No, thank you.
All right, thank you.
We'll move on to environmental services.
Good evening. How's everyone tonight?
Oh,
Lovely to see you in the
Yeah.
evening. Shelley Benson's Environmental Services Director, and I have Becky Schlorf, Ag Water Resources Supervisor, here to go through this item.
Good evening, Commissioners.
Good evening.
This item is to authorize the County Board Chair to sign the 2020 and 2021 County Feedlot Delegation Agreement Work Plan and Grant Agreement. The last time that you signed this would have been 2 years ago, so November of 2017. Couple of new things that I'll point out this time around is that this delegation agreement is including 3 changes that are impacting our data requirements for the state. And then another change will be for some of the larger feedlots will have to collect their actual manure records and keep those on file. The second change is that there is a grant agreement now, and that is, I just received a word yesterday, that the state will be having an online signature of that, and I already spoke with Randy yesterday, so there is a change to your action on this item, and that would be looking to have the county board authorize Randy sign the grant agreement so that he can easily do that online. But otherwise, the grant agreement itself may cause some delay of public information. The state is looking to rectify that, but I haven't received anything official from them through some policy changes through the feedlot program. Basically, any public data requests that we receive, we have to, that are state related, we would have to have the MPCA provide us with direction or have them release the data themselves. So that's the last change I have for you. And, oh, I'm sorry, on packet page 94, I did make a mistake there on the match requirement. I was putting all the 2-year numbers in here, and so the 111,302 would be doubled because this is a 2-year grant. So that would be 2022-604. And that is all I have, unless you have some questions.
Questions for Becky? Becky, I have one. At planning last month, somebody was asking about keeping those manure records. They're obligated to have those on file. What does that actually mean to have that on file?
So for feedlot owners that are applying manure in sensitive areas, so for instance shoreland, they have to keep their manure records on file for a 6-year period. Otherwise, it's a 3-year period. And the records are their statement of the amounts of manure, type of manure, rate of application, method, date, for each crop year. Mm-hmm. And we review those records, and this is for feedlots that are 100 animal units, registered for 100 animal units or more. We review those records upon a compliance inspection or a complaint. And for sites that are registered for 300 animal units or more, there's just more detail involved, so that would include phosphorus as well as nitrogen.
Okay, but, their question was, when you say having the record on file, does that mean it has been submitted to us, or does that mean that they're keeping the record at home and just have it available for people?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I'm sorry, I didn't understand your question.
Okay.
So yes,
Yeah.
it is to have on file at home. So typically, when we do an inspection, so right now we're looking at taking pictures with the staff's smartphone or tablet, or having them mail it in so we can get a copy, because we'll have to have a copy for the larger feedlots now. But sometimes they're working with a crop consultant. And so we will give them 30 days to submit those to us for being compliant with the record-keeping requirements. So they can either have them on site or have their crop advisor send it in within 30 days.
Okay, good. Okay. Any other questions about the agreement? If not, I think somebody should move that.
I'll move the recommended action.
Commissioner Notch?
And Mr. Chair, can I just clarify that that action is to have the chair sign the delegation agreement and the auditor sign the grant agreement?
I would be honored.
Okay.
I will second that.
I would be honored to sign that manure agreement.
I've always,
I have
I'm glad you cleaned it up.
it's a cheap shot, I can't pass it up. Yeah, Persky knows his.
Okay, I have a motion and a second for that agreement and to do that signature. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, the motion passes.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else?
I have nothing else for you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Commissioners, that was a rather quick meeting as we move on to the final item, issues by commissioner. First of all, we'll start at the end. Randy, do you have any? Steve?
I can't think of anything.
We gotta wait until 6 o'clock to do the rest of this, right?
Correct.
We do.
Well, I don't have anything.
Jeff?
Nope, nothing.
I don't either. Sounds like we'll have a longer break.
Yeah,
Mike?
You're gonna hear plenty from me in a few minutes.
Okay,
Look,
good.
you know, you adopted, I see Chief Deputy here, you adopted the schedule for this year, but we're gonna do something different on the very first meeting of 2020. We're gonna have the sheriff's color guard start our meeting.
Excellent. Yeah,
Oh.
we'll look forward to that.
wow.
Okay. So then technically, we're not going to adjourn, we're just going to take a break. Is that correct? Is it a new meeting or
I think
is this a
you
meeting
can
over?
adjourn and then
You're
go open the
the,
public hearing.
you're the
Oh.
chair, you know,
Okay.
provide leadership.
Okay, well, I'm
Yeah,
just
wimp,
trying,
get with it.
I'm trying to read the.
He's thinking in the manure.
Yeah, you can't wait to sign that.
I gotta get to
Agreement.
the back room and sign that. Okay, we'll go ahead and we'll adjourn this meeting with a motion, please.
I'll do that.
Okay, Commissioner Lenzmeyer? Jeff, would you like us to adjourn?
No second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. 6 o'clock, time for our Truth in Taxation meeting. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call will show that all commissioners are present tonight. Tonight we have a special meeting. It's a Truth in Taxation meeting, and this is a protocol that we follow by state statute. And I have just something to explain the process to you. We're holding this Truth in Taxation meeting as required by the state to allow the public to understand and participate in the county's budget. The meeting tonight is only for informational purposes. No decisions will be made and no action will be taken tonight on the 2020 county budget or the county levy. We will then have the county administrator present an overview of our proposed budget and levy for 2020. We will then hear from the county auditor, treasurer, about how the proposed levy impacts your local property taxes. Following the presentation, we will open the floor to receive testimony then from the public. Members of the public that are not in attendance tonight may participate by sending their comments to the administration before December 17th, when the board will schedule that meeting, which will actually adopt the final 2020 budget and levy. Okay? With that, we'll move forward and begin the meeting.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the county board for your leadership and guidance as we prepared the 2020 budget, and of course your guidance throughout the year. Thanks to the budget committee, who's right here, Steve and Sarah and Randy, for all their work, and the leadership team, most of who is behind me, and all the staff that brings this budget together. It is truly a team effort, and everyone involved, I think, understands the importance of the budget process and the importance of the final document, because it guides our work for the people of Stearns County for the coming year, and it sets the stage for future years as well. As we go through this, I hope you'll find that the many programs and initiatives occurring now and those that are planned for 2020, of course, support our mission of a safe, healthy, vibrant county, and also support our values. And every member of the leadership team, most of who are behind us here and in front of us here, they are all currently guiding some kind of positive change for the county and for their departments, whether it's efforts to stop human trafficking, our award-winning mental health steering committee, many technology improvements in many areas, our new property services division, or our new service center building, and many other initiatives and changes. All of those connect to a safe, healthy, vibrant county and support our values of professional, approachable, responsive, collaborative, and fair and equitable. I'm happy to say that this leadership team leads with yes. They embrace our values, and they know how to get things done. And although none of the departments received everything that they requested of in this budget process, they will get things done in the coming year as well. And so we want to talk a little bit about what is in this budget. And financially, you'll see that the total expenditures have increased by 2.9%, and the levy is also going to increase by about 2.9%. But our property tax rate is going to drop by over 2%. It's also a budget that looks to the future, especially now that we are beginning to focus on a looming, very large capital project. Now, of course, we reviewed our fee structure, and we've talked, and we'll talk a little more later about our appropriation to outside agencies. And again, we've really paid close attention to planning out our debt, as we talked about when we talked about our CIP. Speaking of that, in the infrastructure area, especially because of our sales tax for highway projects, this would be the third year that we are budgeting for a highway project. We have $21 million worth of highway improvements included in this budget. And of course, we'll finish the current projects that we have going on, which is the expansion of the service center, and then the remodeling of this building. And then, as we talked about during the CIP, we will begin to study and plan for whatever it is we need to do regarding a law enforcement center and jail. In the technology area, of course, we continue to monitor and protect our cybersecurity. In fact, we just had some training, countywide training for all of our employees going on a week or so ago on phishing. We will continue to work on our initiatives to improve broadband. There's no money set aside in this budget for broadband, but we will continue our work to encourage improved broadband, particularly in the western part of the county. And I can tell you, just recently I learned that Arbig did apply for a border-to-border grant for the Kimball area, and hopefully they'll get awarded that. They're looking seriously. They're engineering for the El Rosa area, and so they're costing that out in hopes of doing something there. And then, as I've reported to you in the past, Midco continues to make their plans for some expansion particularly in the southwestern part of the county, and we'll continue our conversations with them, trying to get them to do even more. We also have a lot of technology upgrades. We're upgrading the county website now. We'll finish that next year. Upgrading the county's phone system. We'll finish that next year. And then we have a whole host of what I would say are somewhat smaller projects, but nevertheless very important to the work that we do. And then under what we've called organizational here, you'll see that we're going to continue to implement study recommendations by the most recent one in the auditor and property services area and the attorney and the sheriff. You'll see actually that we have 14 new positions proposed in this budget, most of which are recommended by those previous studies as we continue to implement them and or paid for by other entities, either by another level of government, by grants or by contract. And you'll see a little bit more of that. Of course, we'll complete the comprehensive plan in 2020. And then we have, of course, many mandates, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But we are seeing that we need to budget a significant increase, particularly in children's placement costs, of well over $600,000 in this 2020 budget. Again, of course, we will work with AMC and MICA to influence the legislator as much as we can about our issues, and we'll be scheduling a meeting with our area legislators, I would guess sometime in January before the session starts in February. To continue some of the other initiatives or things that we need to fund in this budget, of course, we continue to implement our bargaining agreements, and this year there's a 3% increase in the pay grid, and that is upwards of $3 million in costs, offset by some funding, and we'll talk about that a little later too. We'll continue our efforts to improve people's mental health, including implementing the co-responder model that we talked about at our last meeting. And as you know, we're getting, with those kinds of programs, we're getting better outcomes, and we're also saving dollars. We have many changes to our elections and a big election year coming up, also another major driver of some increases in this year's budget. We will continue to implement the last year of what we've called our triennial review of all our job descriptions. It's a much smaller group in 2020, so it shouldn't have quite the price tag attached to it as the last year did. And then we will continue to implement our new program of employee training. And that's a lot that is in this budget, and it's really only highlights of everything that we have going on. You're going to see more about, and a little more detail about some of these as we give you the budget detail. But before we get too far into the numbers, I just want to take a minute to quickly remind you about what we've been doing in our use of performance measures too. And so a couple of years ago, we joined the state's performance management program, and we get a little bit of dollars for doing that, but we're also able to compare ourselves in a number of indicators to all other local governments that are involved in that program. But we also created our own set of performance measures I guess at about the same time. We did that a couple of years ago as well. And so the intention with that, and we presented those during budget time, we talk about with staff about those at budget time. The intent really there is to create a discussion about key indicators and key performance indicators throughout the county. Each department has established a set of performance indicators. And so within all those departments, there's more than 40 indicators. And again, as I said, they're part of our budget process, part of our discussions during the budget, and then part of our presentation to the board, just to create a conversation about what's important around here. So to get into the numbers, I'm going to give just a pretty broad overview of the budget, and then Steve's going to provide some budget detail, and then Randy and Sarah will give a few comparisons that we've developed to other counties, and then the implications on the property tax, and then I'll wrap it up. So if you look at the budget summary, you can see that the total expenditures are $165 million. That's about a 2.9% increase in expenditures. We have an increase in revenues of about 4.8%. That's over $81 million. We're proposing to use about $1 million in fund balance to offset. That's less than we used last year. So all that adds up into a tax levy of about $82.7 million, which is a 2.88% increase in the levy. The resulting tax rate is actually a decrease in the tax rate of over 2%. Some of the major drivers of the budget are on the next slide, and we've already talked about some of those. Existing employees, the 3% increase in the grade is $3.3 million, but has revenue attached to it of about $575,000. The new employees that are proposed here have a net cost of $393,000. And as I said, there's 14 employees recommended in this budget. 6 of those are really paid for by others, and 7 are part of those 3 best practices and personnel studies that were conducted in the past. Also, as we said, it's a big election year with many changes, and so we have a big number there. And then I talked about the children's placements. We continue to increase our investment in the IS infrastructure, so we've added $200,000 in that area. We're using a little less of the project fund, so there's less of the use of fund balance there. And we're fortunate to have an increase in county program aid of a little over $1 million, offset a little bit by that reduction in para aid. And then we have the $350,000 that we will use if our staff designs a sales tax project in the highway department, then we can pay back ourselves from the sales tax fund, and that amounts to the $350,000. And then we have a significant amount of increased revenue in the human services area, which really probably isn't going to be there, and we'll talk about that in a minute with this clawback and its changes in what the DHS is doing. And then, as I said, we have a use of fund balance of a little over $1 million. So those are the major budget drivers. And so we have a couple of noteworthy changes, and this is the one that we're hearing about now, but it's this clawback of some dollars related to the federal Title IV-E, foster care, residential mental health claims, and cash assistance. And so what this amounts to in a nutshell is $265,000 of payments that we've already received that the state wants us to pay back, and then somewhere in the neighborhood of $300,000 that we anticipated receiving that we would now not receive. So the total impact or hit to our budget could be in the area of $560,000 to $600,000. Now, AMC and Micah are working on this. They've advised us just today to please not pay any of that back until we get through some more of our work with DHS. And in fact, they suggest that we may not want to pay anything back until after the legislative session is over. We don't really have a way at this point in our budget to make that up. By law, we can't raise our levy, and so this would be a hit to our fund balance, our human services fund balance, whatever the amount ends up being. The second change is 2 additional employees, both to be paid for by others, and these are a deputy in the sheriff's office and a school resource officer in the sheriff's office. Both would be assigned to the Kimball area. One paid for by the city of Kimball and Fairhaven Township to be law enforcement in those areas, and then the Kimball schools to have a school resource officer. Certainly these contracts fit nicely with the sheriff's efforts to be more involved with the public in his community policing efforts. And certainly, I think would make them more approachable and collaborative, I might say. Lastly, as a part of the broad overview of the budget, I don't think we can talk about that without touching on mandates a little bit. And of course, mandates are something that we are required to do by law, by federal government or the state government, and mandated service account for much of what we do. We say 88 to 85% here. I think we've had numbers higher than that in the past as well. And so, I think you've all seen this graph before, but you can see the top line there is intergovernmental revenues, and the blue line is that the blue line.
The top line is levy.
Well, I'm colorblind, so I'm having troubles with this. The blue line, I should know which way it goes. The blue line is the levy, and the other line that I really don't know what color it is intergovernmental revenues. And we used to show this to go way back further. This goes from 2011 to 2020, but there was a time when this actually intersected. There was a time when intergovernmental revenues were a little more than 50%. And so you can see over the years with the trend line there that over time, our local levy has had to pay for more of the services than the intergovernmental. So the trend line is pretty clear there that we're picking up more of the burden of the services that we are mandated to require. And I think you can see the trend there, and I decided we should stop showing so far back, but sometime now that I look at it again, I think it would have been nice to see that intersection. But over time, and the trend continues. You can see there's times maybe when we had a one-time grant or something, and things spike a little bit, but the trend line really shows how this has been going on for quite many years. The next graphic really shows a little bit how the budget impacts the levy, which gets a little bit into intergovernmental revenues too. So you can see that human services, for example, is 36% of the expenditures and about the same of the levy, while the general fund, which is a bulk of that is public safety, is 36% of the expenditures, but 45% of the levy. And road and bridge is 21% of the expenditures and only 9% of the levy. So we have, the example in road and bridge is a good example. We have outside dollars there that come in from the state. We have different revenues too with our sales tax and the wheelage tax. And so that's my broad overview, and I'm going to turn it over to Steve, and he's going to give you a little more detail about all these numbers.
Good evening, Commissioners. So again, as we look at the detail, looking at how we break down the budget a couple of different ways to look at it. In terms of the four broad categories, personnel, services, supplies, and capital outlay, you can see again that the budget total expenditures is going up just under 3%, 2.97 from last year. The biggest increase by percentage is in supplies, but that's again about $600,000. The bulk of that is related to elections expenses again. The capital outlay spending is down about 10% from 4.1 to 3.7, and that is mostly due to some of the big purchases we were running through the project fund in 2019. Our services, this is our operations, our contracts with professionals, and contracts for service, especially in human services, is just going up slightly, so under about $40,000, just 0.5% difference. And personnel, as mentioned earlier, is going up 5% based on, again, the labor contracts that we have and all of the 14 positions that are recommended as part of this budget. So about 1% of the personnel increase is just strictly from those new position requests. In terms of those personnel requests, you can see again this slide will indicate all the different positions that are being requested. As Mike indicated, most of these are due to study recommendations that have occurred in the past couple of years. So the 2 positions in the attorney's office, from the review of the attorney's office that we had accomplished. The 2 positions in the auditor's office are based on the recommendations that came from the David Drown study that was released earlier this year. In facilities, we're asking for another custodian with the doubling of the size of that building just to keep up with the amount of custodial staff we need to get everything done in a timely manner. Human services, again, those positions are not paid for by the levy. They are being paid for by state and federal revenue sources, 2 social workers in our MinChoice program, and then looking to expand our family nurse partnership and increase our caseloads there to help bring in more revenue. And the sheriff's office, again, we're based on the study recommendation that was undertaken, we are looking to add 3 dispatchers to help with the call volumes. And then again, as part of a late budget change, we did add onto this slide again the 2 positions for deputies based on the request for service from the Kimball area. In terms of our capital improvement projects, again, just looking at ones that we will actually be undertaking in 2020 for the board. These are ones that we talked about just a few meetings ago on our capital improvement plan. But in 2020, we're going to be looking at expanding the geo field at the Household Hazardous Waste Building. And again, that'll be paid for by the Solid Waste Fund, so there's no levy impact on that one. The Belgrade Highway Shop, we're looking to put a fence there. Again, it's the last of our highway shops that doesn't have a fence. And so again, as we've been doing about 1 a year, it's time for the Belgrade Shop to have theirs. And again, that'll be paid for by fund balance from highway. In parks, we have a couple of projects from the Dairyland Trail, getting some construction work done, and then starting work on Wildwood Park, looking at some road engineering to upgrade the entrance to that park. In terms of brick and mortar, we are going to be looking at upgrading the boilers for this building. Again, it's about 25 or 30 years old since they've really been redone. And again, starting on the remodel for this building now that we have the service center complete. On technology side, again, we're looking to increase our technology budget by another $200,000. We've been doing that every year for the past 3 years. We're still not quite up to where we were before the recession in terms of technology spending, but hopefully in another year or 2 we can catch back up to that level. The biggest projects that were listed in the budget requests for this year are, again, upgrading some of our systems and replacement, because software changes and technology doesn't stand still. So our data storage system needs to be replaced. Our image trend system has to be replaced. Again, the squad car videos that we have, again, those systems, the systems get outdated over time much faster than what most people would think about, but we'll have to upgrade our video systems there and inside the jail and do some enhancements as well. And then look at a case management system for one of our larger departments, because the system they've been using is I think, almost 20 years old. Again, as we talked about earlier, we're using less project fund money in 2020. Again, it's a fund that we use for one-time expenses, not for operations. And in 2020, we're going to be using about $250,000 to purchase election equipment. Is the most efficient way to get all that equipment updated and get it paid for in 1 year instead of spreading that out over several. In terms of the road construction program, as Mike indicated earlier, we're going to be spending about $21 million on our road construction plan in 2020. This slide shows a breakdown of all the different funding sources for this. As you can see, we're having multiple sources, either from the state aid, for regular county aid or municipal aid, to the tune of just about $8 million there. The sales tax we're projecting will bring in $5.3 million in revenue for road projects. The county levy, we are going to be levying $2.8 million to help with those road projects. The wheelage tax, the $10 for when people come in to do their tabs, will generate $1.6 million next year. And then, as you can see, federal aid and bridge bonding will bring in another $2 million, and then local governments will also be contributing to some projects that happen in their areas for $1 million as well. And then lastly, for my area, is the outside agencies. As the board is aware, we've been reviewing the number of agencies that we provide money to on a regular basis, and I know there was a board conversation, I believe, at your last meeting to look at what criteria we use for contributing to agencies outside of us in terms of economic development, non-governmental agencies, or other quasi-governmental agencies. And again, every year we do try to look at those requests as they come in and pare them down to what makes sense based on the needs. There are some that are just pass-throughs, like the library, where it's a joint powers board, and we are obligated to pay whatever they pass along to us. And again, you can see the library is the largest of the outside agencies, and their request for 2020 is $3,000 less than 2019. So again, it was in 2018 it was 4.1 million, and we're still at 4.1 million for all the outside agencies for 2020. And now I will turn it over to Sarah.
All right, good evening. We put together a couple slides about how we compare to other counties across the state, and in some cases our comparison counties, just as a relevance point. And this first slide here is a statewide comparison. The top set of numbers talks about how we rank in total expenditures per capita. So this takes our total expenditures and divides it by our population and compares us to other counties, all 87 counties, and we rank 81st, meaning we're towards the bottom in number of expenditures per person. The second group of numbers there talks about our intergovernmental revenue rank per capita, and this shows that we are 79th, or again, on the lower end of how much intergovernmental revenue we receive. And when I looked at that ranking, that's pretty comparable to our neighboring counties and to our comparable counties, if that sounds right. The ones that ranked the highest in the intergovernmental revenue stuff were the small counties with a real small population. Some of those get a lot of PILT dollars if they have a lot of land, state and federal land, or some of the intergovernmental revenues are given to all counties and population is not a factor. So Stearns County is ranked low in intergovernmental revenue, but that's very comparable to the other counties our size. Looking at relating to property taxes and our levy, our levy rate, as Mike has mentioned, went down to 50.29% in 2020, and our rank on where we compare to in the 87 counties per capita is we are 78th, meaning that we are on the low end of the levy per capita. There was a comparison done with us against our MICA counties, comparison counties, and neighboring counties as it relates to our levy increase. And our levy increase that we are proposing is 2.88% levy increase. You'll see that our MICA counties average 4.9, comparison counties 4.5, and neighboring counties 3.6. So we are lower than those on average. Lastly, another comparable slide to see where we fit in is how the county changes in levy have occurred based on levy size and based on population. So Stearns County, our levy size is 80 million, so we would be down at the bottom where the average is 4.8% and our population is over 100,000. Again, statewide average for that kind of county is 4.8%. With that, I'll turn it over to Randy to talk about property tax impact.
So the first slide is county tax rates. As you can see, our rates continue to trend downward. As I mentioned, the rate went down 2.16% for pay 2020. And this is a result of the tax base increasing more than the levy. So the tax base went up over 5%, and the levy went up 2.9%. So then your rate's going to go down. The next slide is on new construction. So we had $190 million in new construction for payable 2020. The year before that was $179 million, and those are some of the highest numbers we've seen in new construction. So those are very healthy numbers. As we go down that slide, the $1.2 million, that's the county taxes just on that new construction. And then our total increase in levy is at $2.3 million, so about 53% of the levy increase will be paid for by new construction. So.
Randy, I know we got Mr. Johnson in the audience here. Of that new construction, do we approximately how much that's residential and how much is that?
I think a high percent amount is that, but Jeff could probably help us with more exact numbers. So.
Okay, just curious.
A change in their tax base, so this gives a little bit of detail of that 5% increase in our tax base. And there is some shifting between property type, so it gets a little bit confusing and can be misleading. Residential homestead, for instance, went up 6.9%. Our market value in that area went up 5.8%, so most of that is a market value change. The residential non-homestead, that's a pretty big amount there, but I think some of it is when you have transactions, people buying and selling houses, and the new construction is probably a lot of that sitting in there, so some of that eventually may get reclassified into residential homestead. Other than that, the side is pretty self-explanatory. Countywide taxes, so this is a levy for all the jurisdictions. We have 30 cities, and on average, they went up 6.86%. Townships, we have 34 of those, going up 3.7%, excuse me. The school district, the one thing I'll note there, that does not include the questions and the referendums that were just passed in November. Tax increment financing is a large increase. We have 2 new districts, plus that's where you're going to see a lot of the growth because the projects are happening and you're seeing a lot of value being added there. So that's expected to see tax increment financing increasing there. So
Repeat that, I was gonna ask that question.
on the tax increment financing.
Yeah.
Okay. So we added 2 new districts, so any growth in those districts are going to add to that increase. And then as they're doing projects in a tax increment financing district, all that increase is captured here. So those areas are high activity areas that you're going to see a lot of new construction in. So,
All right.
let's see. Next slide is showing for county tax only with a 2.8% increase in levy, but this assumes no increase in market value. So it's not meant to show what citizens will actually see, but just kind of an understanding of what a change in tax rate will do. So with that, all property types will see a decrease of the 2.1% because of the decrease in tax rate. So it follows right through that with that. The next slide is to show more of an average picture of the county taxes. So this is the 2.8% levy increase, and then the average increase by property type. So for residential homestead, with the 5.8% average increase, they're going to see an increase anywhere from 4.3 to 6.5%. And what happens in residential is as your value goes up, you lose some homestead exclusion. That's the way the program helps to keep residential homesteads more affordable. Ag homestead will actually see a decrease on average in their property taxes. Commercial industrial will see a small increase, and then seasonal rec will be about a 5% on average. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this one, but it's somewhat confusing, but this is to show a residential homestead is a little more confusing on the tax calculation when you get into the homestead exclusion, and this is kind of breaking out the 3 ways that changes. So, and with that, I'll turn it back over to Mike.
All right. You can put the process up there, Steve. We're not quite done. We want to make sure that the public understands that. They can still give us some thoughts by contacting the administration office or our budget at co.stearns.mn.us. We had a few comments that have come in an email that were put in front of you this evening. And then, as Chair Persky suggested earlier, on December 17th, you will be asked to take action on a final budget, and really need to do that before the end of the year, of course. And just a reminder that we have this large probable hit to the budget that we'll be working our way through. I'm sure we'll hear a lot about that at our AMC conference next week, but it is a significant number to our budget. And just to wrap it up, you see a budget with expenditures an increase of 2.97%, a levy increase of 2.8%. We have a market value increase of just over 5%, which results in a decrease in the tax rate of a little more than 2%. And the last slide I'll give you will show that how people can email in their comments, and that concludes our remarks about the budget.
Okay, well, thank you. Then board members, first of all, do you have any other questions?
Well, I don't know if we can address like some of these letters that came in now, or if you want to do it later.
And I think you have 3 in front of you there.
There are
And I
4.
can tell you that, is there 4? Okay. I believe we've contacted all of those people, and some of those were related to evaluations, so our assessor's office talked to those people and I think has resolved their issues.
Okay.
And maybe not changed them, but developed an understanding of what happened.
Yeah, the only one was the one that, where they saw their valuation go up like $60,000 and said they didn't do anything. Is that just a result of sales in their area, pretty much?
Well,
Kinda
not
what-
only
kinda what I
that,
figured.
they get reviewed once every 4 years. So sometimes you'll get, and this argument that preceded me around here, is that you'll get a comment like, well, my value jumped 50% in 1 year. And no, it might have jumped 50%, but it's in 4 years or longer. So, yeah, pretty common misconception.
One of those, and I don't know which one you had up there, Commissioner Notch, but one of those did have some improvements once they finally fleshed it out,
Yeah.
they understood it
Yeah.
too.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and then we
Yeah.
certainly get calls in the treasurer's office, and we work with the assessor's office, and so this is kind of a sample, but,
Okay.
we are getting more calls too, so, and then we had a normal call volume this year, so.
Okay. And we still invite the public to continue, if they have questions, to contact you.
Yep.
Okay.
And there's- as we did last year in the notices, we included a flyer, a 2-page flyer that gave information about the budget and advertised this meeting as well.
Okay. Board members, any other concerns? If not, we do have to open it to the public to see if there's anybody here that does want to testify or make any comments. So I'll open the meeting up to the public. Anybody want to testify today on truth in taxation? Anybody wishing to testify or talk about our truth in taxation? Last chance. If not, I'll close that opportunity, but people still want to comment, they're more than welcome to send those comments to us before the 17th. Okay? Any other business, board members? No? If not, I'll look for a motion to adjourn. Motion, Commissioner Clark?
I'll second it.
Commissioner Lenz, thank you, Commissioner Lenzmeyer.
I figured you might as well end the show.
All those in
too.
favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned.